ஸோ என்னென்ன ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்குது கான்ஸ்டியூஷனில், என்னென்ன ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்குது மைனாரிட்டிஸ்க்கு அப்படின்னு சொன்னாங்க. ஒரு 5 மினிட்ஸ் ஒரு சின்ன ரீகேப், ரைட்டா? ஒரு 5 மினிட்ஸில் சார் பேசினது நம்ம ஒரு சின்ன ரீகேப் பண்ணி பார்க்கலாம். ஸோ யாருன்னா சொல்ல முடியுமா என்ன என்ன ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்குது கான்ஸ்டியூஷனில், இந்தியன் கான்ஸ்டியூஷனில் மைனாரிட்டி ரைட்ஸ்க்கான என்ன ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்குது அப்படின்னு சொல்ல முடியுமா? ஆமாம், ஆர்டிகல் 29, ஆர்டிகல் 30, இந்தியன் கான்ஸ்டியூஷனில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஆர்டிகல் 29 பற்றி, ஆர்டிகல் 30 பற்றி பேசினாங்க. அந்த ஆர்டிகல் 29, ஆர்டிகல் 30 என்னம்மா சொல்லுது? சிறுபான்மையினருக்கு என்ன சொல்லுது? என்னம்மா சஞ்சய் ப்ளீஸ், சஞ்சய் சொல்லுமா, அப்படி சொல்லுப்பா. பண்பாடு, சிறுபான்மை மக்களுடைய பண்பாடை மதிக்கணும், கல்வி உரிமைகளை வழங்கணும். அதான் அந்த 29-30. அதில் சட்டப்பிரிவு 30 வந்து இன்ஸ்டிடியூஷன் அமைச்சிக்கிறதுக்கான ரைட்ஸ் கொடுக்குது. இப்போ இஸ்லாமியா காலேஜ் அமைஞ்சிருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொன்னால் அது இந்திய அரசியலமைப்பு வழங்கப்பட்டிருக்கக்கூடிய 30வது சட்டப்பிரிவு, அதில் தான் இதாகுது. அதே மாதிரி 29 வந்து அவங்களுக்கு வந்து தங்களுடைய பண்பாடை, கலாச்சாரத்தை, மொழியை அவங்க பின்பற்றுவதற்கும் அதை பாதுகாப்பதற்கும் அவங்களுக்கு முழு உரிமை 29 கொடுக்கப்பட்டிருக்கு. இது இல்லாமல் வேற என்ன ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்கு? சார் பேசினாங்க, சின்ன ரீகேப். வேற அந்த 29-30 இல்லாமல் கூட சொன்னாங்க. பிரியாம்பிளை பற்றி பேசினாங்க. சரி, அதை விட முக்கியமான விஷயங்களை சார் சொன்னாங்க. ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட்ஸில் எந்த இடத்துல ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட்ஸை பற்றி பேசினாங்க? ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட்ஸில் வந்து சொன்னாங்க எந்த ஆர்டிக்கல்? 25, ஆர்டிக்கல் 25. 29 தான் கல்ச்சுரல் அண்ட் எஜுகேஷனல் ரைட்ஸ். 25 ரைட் டு ஃப்ரீடம் டு ப்ரொஃபஸ் ப்ராக்டிஸ் எனி ரிலிஜன். 25, 26, 27, 28 இந்த 5 ஆர்டிக்கல் 25, 26, 27, 28. ஸோ 4 ஆர்டிக்கலும் ரிலிஜன் சம்மந்தப்பட்டது. நம்ம ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட ரிலிஜனை, அது மைனாரிட்டி ரிலிஜனாக இருந்தாலும் சரி, எந்த ரிலிஜனாக இருந்தாலும் சரி, அதை ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணுறதுக்கு, அதை ஃபாலோ பண்ணுறதுக்கு நமக்கு உரிமை இருக்குது அப்படின்னு சொன்னாங்க. ஸோ அண்டு இன்னும் எஃபர்ட் எடுத்து டைரக்டிவ் பிரின்சிபிள்ஸில் என்னென்ன ஷரத்துகள் இருக்குது, ரிலீஜன் சம்மந்தப்பட்ட என்னென்ன ஷரத்துகள் இருக்குது அப்படின்னு சொல்லி சொன்னாங்க இல்லையா? அதில் ஒரு ஆர்டிக்கல், ரொம்ப முக்கியமான ஆர்டிக்கல் ஒன்று சொன்னாங்க. எந்த ஆர்டிக்கல்? டைரக்டிவ் பிரின்சிபிள்ஸில் எந்த ஆர்டிக்கல் ரொம்ப முக்கியமாக? நீங்கள் வந்து காம்படிட்டிவ் எக்ஸாமுக்கெலாம் ப்ரிப்பேர் பண்ணுறீங்க, அப்போ உங்களுக்கு ஆர்டிகல்ஸ்லாம் அப்படியே தெரியணும், பை ஹார்ட்டாக தெரியணும். எந்த ஆர்டிக்கலை பற்றி சொன்னாங்க? ஆர்டிக்கல் 44 பற்றி சொன்னாங்க. ஆர்டிக்கல் 44 வந்து என்ன சொல்லுது? யூனிஃபார்ம் சிவில் கோடை பற்றி பேசுது இல்லையா? அது ஏன் கூடாது அப்படின்னு சொல்லி சார் சொன்னாங்க. யூனிஃபார்ம் சிவில் கோட் வரக்கூடாது அப்படின்னு சொல்லி சார் பேசினாங்க இல்லையா? ஆமாம் தானே? ரைட். ஆர்டிக்கல் 44. அது மாதிரி டைரக்டிவ் பிரின்சிபல்ஸ்லையும் சில ப்ரொவிஷன்ஸ் இருக்குது. சரியா? ரைட். ஓகே. இப்போ now we'll go for the next session. Next session is about government initiatives for protection of or empowering minorities, for protecting or empowering minorities. So before we go to the session, we would like to honor Dr. H.K. Sulaiman Khan sir, and I request Dr. C. Mohammad Fahim sir to honor Dr. H.K. Sulaiman sir with a shawl. So now I hand over the proceedings to Dr. H.K. Sulaiman Khan sir for the second session. இல்லை நீங்கள் எங்கேருந்து பேசுங்க இங்கேருந்து ப்ரொஜெக்டர் இது ப்ரொஜெக்டர் ஸ்லைட் இங்கேருந்து வில் கோ டவுன் ஸோ தட்
Shall I start, sir? Sir, shall I start? Oh. Thank you, sir. Dear participants, I need your same cooperation from like that first session, now that session also. Thank you. So last session we have discussed about rights of minorities. Now we are going to discuss about the government initiatives for welfare of minorities. A large number of measures, welfare measures, have been made by the central and state government to reach education, health services, subsidized food, drinking water, shelter, and other basic needs to the people. Several schemes are being implemented for poverty alleviation, rural and urban employment, formation of self-help groups, aiming at income generation, and so on. All these schemes have an impact on the well-being of the citizens of India, irrespective of religion. Through the 5-year plans, what the government take initiative for minorities. Here, in the initial years, a separate focus on minorities was not considered necessary, since developmental planning in India unleashed a process of growth and all-round developments which had an effect on the minority groups as well. All the weaker sections of society benefited from welfare measures launched for SC, SCs, STs, OBCs, schemes for artisans, educational and health programs, schemes for underdeveloped regions, and poverty alleviation schemes. However, from time to time, a special thrust was provided for minorities as well. This additional thrust has become more prominent in the previous decade, particularly since 2001 and with the 10th 5-year plan from 2002 to 2007. In the 8th plan from 1992 to 1997, 3 national level apex bodies were set up to give a greater thrust to the economic development of weaker sections of society. These apex level bodies were the National Backward Classes Finance and Development Corporation, set up in 1992, the National Minorities Development and Finance Corporation, set up in 1994-1995, and National Safai Karamchari Finance and Development Corporation, set up in 1996 and 1997. While NMDFC was specifically meant for the religious minorities, the other 2 included them amongst the targeted beneficiaries. The 10th plan, 2002 to 2007, explicitly formulated programs, the social and economic empowerment of SCs, STs, OBCs, and minorities in the framework of growth and social justice. The 10th plan outlined specific protective and promotional measures for minorities in educational and economic spheres, provision of basic amenities and services to backward minority concentrated pockets were to be ensured. Modernization of education, technical and vocational education, appropriate technical and development of entrepreneurship, along with necessary financial support, would be key strategies during the 10th plan, leading to social and economic empowerment of the minorities. Exclusive efforts in the 10th plan were to be made to promote the educational development of Muslims, especially of their women and girl children, by modernizing and mainstreaming the traditional education system and institutions, namely madrasas, through adopting syllabi being followed in the regular education system. The 11th plan provides an opportunity to restructure policies to achieve new vision based on fast, more broad-based and inclusive growth. Thus, the 11th plan is committed to bringing on par scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, minorities and others left behind in line with our constitutional commitment. Next one, High Power Panel under the chairmanship of Dr. Gopal Singh. In 1983, a high power panel was appointed by the Ministry of Home Affairs, headed by Dr. Gopal Singh. This committee identified Muslims and Neo-Buddhists as two educationally backward minorities at the nation's eve and proposed special efforts for bringing them at par with the rest of the society. Neo-Buddhists have since been placed at par with the SC population for receiving all the benefits. For Muslim minority, 44 districts with a concentration of Muslims based on 1981 census were identified for special attention. Next one, the 15 points program for minorities during 1983. In May 1983, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi issued a 15 points directive on welfare of minorities. The 15 points program for minorities announced in 1983 focused on priority areas such as the need to tackle the situation arising out of communal riots and preventing further communal riots, ensure adequate representation of minority communities in employment under central and state as well as public sector undertakings, ensuring flow of benefits to the minority communities under various development programs such as maintenance and development of religious places, work properties and redressal of grievances of the minorities. It was felt that in many areas recruitment is done through competitive examinations and often minority groups are unable to take advantage of the educational system to compete on equal terms. Therefore, steps should be taken to encourage the starting of coaching classes in minority adequate number of persons belonging to these communities. National Policy on Education 1986. The need to take special steps to advance education of Muslims as noted in the National Policy of Education 1986, its programs of action revised in 1992 and led to formulation of the area intensive educational development as a central government scheme of the Ministry of Human Resource Development. The National Policy on Education 1986 states the following with regard to minorities. Some minority groups are educationally backward or deprived. Greater attention will be paid to the education of these groups in the interest of equality and social justice. This will naturally include the constitutional guarantees given to them to establish and administer their own educational institutions and protection to their languages and culture. Simultaneously, objectivity will be reflected in the preparation of textbooks and in all school activities, and all possible measures will be taken to promote integration based on appreciation of common national goals and ideas. In conformity with the core curriculum, this has been reiterated in the revised policy formulation 1992. The program action of 1992. The program action of 1992 first took note of the existing programs for the Muslim minorities and suggested a large number of short-term, medium-term and long-term measures to promote their education and technical skills and for their integration in the mainstream through measures such as systematic evaluation of textbooks from standpoint of national integration by the NCERT and intensification of orientation programs for the principals or managers and training programs for teachers from minority educational institutions. Major schemes proposed in the Program of Action 1992 include the centrally sponsored scheme of area intensive program for educational backward minorities, the centrally sponsored scheme of modernization of madrasas education by introduction of science, mathematics, English or Hindi in traditional madrasas and maktabs on voluntary basis. A centrally sponsored scheme of appointment of Urdu teachers in the states where Urdu is spoken by substantial numbers and centrally sponsored scheme of language teachers funded by the Government of India to encourage states in achieving the targets in respect of minorities education. High-level Committee on Social, Economic and Education Status of Muslim Community in India, it is known as Sachar Committee. In March 2005, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh appointed a high-level committee to prepare a report on the social, economic and educational status of Indian Muslims. The 7-member committee headed by the Justice Rajinder Sachar, retired, submitted its report to the Prime Minister in November 2006. The Sachar Committee's report is an extremely valuable document on the social, economic and educational status of Indian Muslims for two reasons. Firstly, its findings are a shocking testimony to 6 decades of institutional neglect and basis that and bias that has left the country's Muslims far behind other socio-religious communities in the areas of education, employment, access to credit, access to social and physical infrastructure and political representation. Thus, the report thoroughly exposes the Sangh Parivar's baseless propaganda of Muslim appeasement. Secondly, its recommendations contain the seeds of a major socio-economic transformation of 150 million Indian Muslims. If the recommendations were to be honestly implemented, it can be dramatic changes in the life of Muslims, just as action on the recommendations of the Mandal Commission did for the OBCs. The report has made numerous recommendations for urgent governmental actions to redress the problem of Muslim backwardness. This is essential not only in the interest of equality and fair play. It is also in the national interest because no country can hope to progress if it leaves behind 150 million of its population. Immediate remedial action is essential both in the interest of equity and in the national interest. But the track record of even self-proclaimed secular governments shows that left to themselves, they will at best adopt token measures. What is needed, therefore, is a sustained nationwide citizens' campaign to force governments at the center and in the states to act on the recommendations of the Sachar Committee. For the campaign to be successful, it is important to remember that the problem of educational and economic backwardness and political empowerment of Muslims is not just a Muslim problem. It must be understood and projected as a national problem. It is therefore of utmost importance to ensure that the campaign has the support and participation of all non-communal secular democratic organizations, groups and individuals. The first step in mass mobilization for any campaign is the creation of mass awareness about the findings and recommendations of the Sachar Committee. The findings of the Sachar Committee. Findings of the Sachar Committee. According to the 2001 census, the Muslim population was 138 million out of total population of 1029 million. Percentage-wise, Muslims were about 13.4% of the total population as compared to 80.5% Hindus, including SCs, STs, and 6.1% other minorities, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, and Jains. Currently, the Muslim population is around 150 million. Between 1961 to 2001, the annual growth rate among Muslims has averaged 2.7%, which is well above the national average population growth of 2.1%. The growth of rate for others is Hindus and Christians 2%, Jains 1.8%, Sikhs and Buddhists 2.12%. Between 1991 and 2001, there is a clear decline in the growth rate of Muslims in most of the states. Projections for future population growth in India show that by the end of 21st century, India's total population will stabilize, in which the Muslim population would be less than 20% of total. Thus, the propaganda that the unchecked growth in the Muslim population will result in their overtaking the Hindu population is totally false. Muslims have the best sex ratio among all Indians. Over the decades, the Muslim population shows an increasingly better sex ratio compared with other socio-religious communities. Similarly, Muslims have the highest child sex ratio of any social group in the country. For instance, the child sex ratio Muslims was 986 girls per 1000 boys in the age group 0 to 5 in 1998 to 1999, significantly higher than the ratio of 931 among SCs or STs, 914 among the Hindus, and 859 among other groups. This is very significant finding. The fact that the sex ratio among Muslims is improving while it is on a dangerous decline among some sections of the population shows that among Muslims there is far less bias against the girl child. The literacy rate among Muslims in 2001, 59.1%, is far below the national average, 65.1%. SCs or STs are still the lowest literate group both in urban and rural India. Muslim women in a literacy level of 50% have been able to keep up with women of other communities and are much ahead of SCs or ST women in rural India. With the community's growing focus on education in recent years, there has been a significant increase in enrollment of Muslims. But initial disparities between Muslims and other SRCs have increased in the period 1953 to 2001, and there is still a big gap to be covered. Dropout rate among Muslims is the highest at level of primary, middle and higher secondary compared to all the SRCs. Only 17% Muslims above the age of 17 years have completed matriculation as compared to 26% of all SRCs. Muslims are grossly underrepresented in the elite Indian Institutes of Management and the Indian Institute of Technology. Enrollment data for the years 2004-2005 and 2005 to 2006 shows Muslims were only 1.3% of the total number of students in all the IIM courses. In case of the IITs, out of 27,161 students enrolled in all the courses, only 894 were Muslims. In view of a large number of children with Urdu as their mother tongue, Urdu should be taught as an elective subject up till graduation. The changes in educational patterns across SRCs suggest that SCs and STs have reaped advantage of a targeted government and private effort. This reflects the importance of affirmative actions. Such a report has made recommendations, general policy initiatives that cut across different aspects of socio-economic and education development. Another one is to specific policy measures that deal with the particular issues and or dimensions, example, education, credit, etc. What are the general policies initiatives? Need for transparency, accountability. Create a national data bank where all relevant data pertaining to the socio-economic and educational status of different socio-religious communities is maintained. Such data should be computerized and made available on the internet. Set up an autonomous assessment and monitoring authority accurate to different SRCs through various programs, ensure equal opportunities, end discrimination, set up an equal opportunity commission to look into grievances about the denial of equal opportunity or bias or discrimination by the deprived groups. An example of such a policy tools is the UK Race Relations Act 1976. Existing institutions such as the National Human Rights Commission and the National Commission for Minorities can at the best play a limited role in dealing with many complaints arising on a day-to-day basis against non-state agencies. Enhance Muslim participation in grievances. Because of the logic of numbers in a democratic polity based on the one man, one vote principle, minorities in India often lack effective agency and political importance. A carefully conceived nomination procedure should be worked out to increase the effective participation of minorities in local governance. End the existing system of delimitation of constituencies whereby areas with a Muslim concentration are declared as reserved constituencies for SCs. This effectively disempowers Muslims. Evolve a more rational procedures for delimitation of constituencies. Felicitate creation of common public spaces. Encourage the building of parks, libraries, and even study space in mixed localities, mid across neighborhoods, so that children belonging to different SRCs can interact and at the same time pursue studies. These can be used by community or civil society to organize remedial classes, reading rooms, and other constructive initiatives. Sensitize government servants, sensitize state official and other functionaries about the need to respect and sustain diversity in the development and implementation of programs or in the provision of services and the problems associated with social exclusion. Specific policy initiatives give top priority to education. Free and compulsory education up to the age of 14 is the responsibility of the state, and the fulfillment of this obligation is critical for the improvements in the educational condition of Muslims, in fact of all socio-economically deprived children. To remove bias from social textbooks. A process of evaluating the content of the school textbooks needs to be initiated to purge them of explicit and implicit content that may impart inappropriate social values, especially religious intolerance. Third, establish common study rooms. It is absolutely necessary to create local community study centers in poor localities for students so that they can spend a few hours to concentrate on their studies. This is an area in which the government, NGOs, and the corporate sector can cooperate. Backla varade backla. This is next slide. Next. No. I love. Next. Next. जो अभी नेक्स्ट क्या फर्स्ट चल गया स्लाइड 23 रख स्लाइड 23 okay. Set up high quality government schools in all areas of Muslim concentration. Set up exclusive schools for girls should, particularly for the 9th standard to 12th standards, appoint more women teachers. 23rd, slide 23rd. Slide 23rd. Okay, establish common study rooms. It is absolutely necessary to create local community study centers in poor localities for students so that they can spend a few hours to concentrate on their studies. It is an area in which the government, NGOs and the corporate sector can cooperate. Set up high quality government schools in all areas of Muslim concentration. In co-education schools, availability of primary education in one's mother tongue is constitutionally provided for. Provide primary education in Urdu in areas where Urdu speaking population is concentrated. Technical education and training for non-matriculates. The pre-entry qualification for admission to ITIs should be reduced to class 8th. The scope of courses should be expanded to focus on emerging market needs, including those of retail sector. This committee noted with the concern the low socio-economic status with the higher poverty, lower literacy and educational attainments, higher employment rates, lower availability of infrastructure and lower representation in civil services, including police, judiciary and in elected bodies among Muslim minorities. Minorities have benefited after Sachar committee report. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has flagged his government's achievements in protecting and advancing the rights and interests of Dalits, minorities and other marginalized sections. He cited, among other things, a slew of pro-minority schemes launched in the make of the Ranjit Sachar committee report. Dr. Singh made a special mention of the recently announced subquota of 4.5% for minorities within the 27% OBC reservation, saying he was happy that his government had gone ahead with this decision. The Prime Minister was delivering the inaugural address at a seminar organized in New Delhi by the Dalits and Minorities International Forum. Referring to the persisting impression that his government set up the Sachar committee but was lackadaisical in implementing this recommendation, he said the reality was the opposite. Recruitment of minorities had increased in government jobs, security forces and the banking sector, and simultaneously priority sector leading for minorities and had gone up from 9% to 15%. Besides, 40 lakh scholarships were awarded to minority students and minority-specific development programs implemented in as many as 90 minority concentration districts. The Prime Minister also listed the supportive measures for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and the backward community of weavers. Among them, primacy given to Dalits in procurements made by the state and the announcement of rupees 3,884 crore loan waiver and a special package for the handloom sector. The seminar was organized by Ramvilas Paswan, Lok Jan Shakti party leader and chairman of the forum, and attended by delegates from around the world. New 15 points program for the welfare minorities 2006. A need was felt to review and recast the 15 points program for minorities to sharply focus action on issues intimately linked to the social, educational and economic upliftment of minorities, while points relating to prevention of communal riots and provisions of relief to riot victims. continue to have an important place in the devised program. There are additional points more closely linked with the development of backward minorities relating specifically to employment, education, and improved living conditions. A comprehensive program for minorities, the Prime Minister's new 15-point program for welfare of minorities were formulated and approved by the Cabinet on 22nd June 2006. This program includes enhancing opportunities for education. Education is seen as a necessary intervention to address problems of backwardness of any community. Opportunities will be enhanced through the following measures. Equitable availability of ICDS services. The ICDS aims at a holistic development of children and lactating or pregnant mothers for disadvantaged sections through nutritional and educational inputs. Blocks or villages with a substantial population of minority communities will be covered through ensuring a central percentage of ICDs projects or centers in such areas. Improving access to school education. Elementary schools are being opened in localities, villages across the country where substantial population of minority community lives under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya scheme and other similar government schemes. Greater resources for teaching Urdu. Central assistance will be provided for recruitment of Urdu language teachers in primary and upper primary schools that serve a population in which at least 1/4 belong to that language group. Modernizing madrasa education. The central plan scheme of area intensive and madrasa modernization program will be substantially strengthened and effectively implemented. Scholarship for meritorious students from minority communities. A scheme for pre-matriculation and post-matriculation scholarships for students from minority communities will be formulated and implemented to ensure that poverty does not impede continuation of studies of meritorious students from minority communities. Improving educational infrastructure through the Maulana Azad Education Foundation. Government shall provide all possible assistance to Maulana Azad Education Foundation to enable it to expand its activities with the aim of promoting education amongst the educationally backward minorities. Other government programs for the upliftment of minority communities, self-employment and paid employment for the poor. Swama Jayanti Gram Swarogar Yogna, primary self-employment program for rural areas, will have a certain percentage of physical and financial targets earmarked for beneficiaries belonging to the minority communities living below the poverty line. Swama Jayanti Shahari Rozgar Yojana, the equivalent program for the urban areas, will have a certain certain percentage under both its major components, urban self-employment program and urban wage employment program, earmarked to benefit people from the minority communities living below the poverty line. Sampuma Gramin Rozgar Yojana aimed at providing additional wage employment in rural areas will have a certain percentage earmarked for beneficiaries from minority communities living below the poverty line. A certain percentage of allocation will also be earmarked for creation of infrastructure in villages that have a substantial minority population. Upgradation of skills through technical training. Provision of technical training to the large population of minority communities engaged in low-level technical work or in handicrafts would upgrade their skills and earning capacities. A proportion of all new ITIS will therefore be located in areas predominantly inhabited by minorities, and a proportion of the existing will be upgraded to centers of excellence on the same basis. Enhanced credit support to economic activities. The National Minorities Development and Finance Corporation will be strengthened by government provision of greater equity support to enable it to fully achieve its objectives. Bank credit, essential for creating and sustaining self-employment initiatives, will have a target of 40% of net bank credit from domestic banks fixed for priority sector lending. The priority sector includes agricultural loans, loans to small-scale industries and small businesses, loans to retail traders, professionals and self-employed persons, educational loans and microcredit. A credit percentage of priority sector lending in all categories will be targeted for the minority communities. Prevention and control of communal riots. The welfare of minority communities is linked to effectiveness of measures adopted to address the issue of prevention and control of communal riots as under. Prevention of communal incidents. In areas identified as communally sensitive, aid riot prone, police officers of known efficiency, impartiality and secular record must be posted. The prevention of communal tension should be one of the primary duties of the police and administrative officers. Prosecution for communal offences. Special courts should be set up so that offenders who incite communal tensions or take part in communal violence are speedily tried and punishment meted out. Rehabilitation of victims of communal rights. Victims of communal violence should be provided immediate relief and prompt and adequate financial assistance for rehabilitation. Budgetary support for operationalization of new 15-point program. The budget sends a clear signal that the welfare of minorities as a targeted social group has been put on the same pedestal as that of SCs or STs and OBCs, worthy of specially designed schemes and exclusively provisions. In a way, it marks the continuation of the approach which saw the responsibility of minority welfare being carved out of the social justice ministry to be entrusted to the just created Ministry of Minority Affairs. An allocation of rupees 63 crore has been made for the National Minority